Welcome back to this edition of Snowman in the Morning. Glad to have y'all with us. And as mentioned, all of our guests appear via the Invader Coffee guest line, brought to you by Invader Coffee, fuel for the fearless. Man, I want to welcome someone that I've had on before, and y'all may see a quick graphic change, but I had him on before, and he loves sports and football just as much as I do, and we're going to be covering a lot together. Please help me welcome from the UFL Newshub, Pat Rifino. He joins me right now. Pat, how are you, man? Great to have you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. I'm doing well, just kind of balancing, work, football, and everything like that. And, still at work. A little bit of a time change for me. I'm on the West Coast right now, but, we're having a great time. And you know what? Another plug here, Brian. I just crossed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Congratulations, man. I just did the same for Snowman Multimedia, and this is a crazy time right now with NFL free agency. Of course, you and I are going to be covering the United Football League. Let's start there. The XFL and the USFL have merged. In case you all have followed football, don't know, they have merged. They have come together, and they formed this United Football League. There are 8 teams involved. First of all, let me get your thoughts on the two spring leagues merging and becoming one.
I think it's kind of like when you have an animal that's kind of backed up into a corner, they kind of get a little desperate, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this is a move for survival. If they were as strong as they thought they were, they'd probably be two separate entities, or there might have been a little bit of a shirt change. It's pretty subjective based off like who do you think won in this? Is it the XFL? Is it the USFL? But in the end, my biggest thing I always preach is we had 16 teams. Each team had about 50 people on it, plus coaches and training staff and support staff. And then now we have 8, and we've cut that down. We just had our first round of cuts, and we've essentially slashed an opportunity where it seems like we hit the pinnacle of spring football and football in general in America in 2023.
Yeah, man. A couple of the 8 markets, of course, the league champions are still there. The Arlington Renegades from the XFL and the Birmingham Stallions from the USFL, and those two are going to kick off the season in a matchup of champions to open the season. Tell me your thoughts about that opening game right there, matching the two champions.
I mean, it's a good marketing ploy, right? You hear people, whether they be the majority or minority, still people are talking about which league was better. Oh, the XFL had a team that went 4-6 and wasn't diddly squat versus the USFL that has had only one champion as well, but it's the Birmingham Stallions the last 2 years who've amassed a 21-3 record under Skip Holtz. And not only have they done it twice in a row, they essentially did it with two different quarterbacks, which, get on my high horse here, ironically talking about the Stallions is you got a guy like Alex Magoo who actually essentially won them both championships. He was a reserve quarterback in the championship game in 2022, and kind of willed them over the hump before KJ Costello threw a game sealing interception to Scooby Wright. So I think a lot of people forget about that, and I always like to kind of throw that throw that into the universe out there. But I don't see how you do it any other way. I would have probably kept the teams all in Texas plus Memphis, but I
Mm-hmm.
have to look at the schedule again from a just what's the word I'm looking for from a like travel perspective. But in
Yeah.
the end, I still have spring football. Obviously, the dates have been moved a little bit. For the USFL, it got pushed up. For the XFL, it got pushed back. A little bit upset about that because I think there's a lot of experience these guys gain and go in the rookie mini camp.
Mm-hmm.
And with this happening during it, you're not going to see that right now.
Pat Rifino joining us here on the program, talking talking the merger of the USFL and the XFL. coming into the United Football League. It starts March 30th. That we talked about the game that pits the two champions against each other. The dates have been released. Go to theufl.com for all the coverage. But man, I'm excited for the players that get a second chance. But some of the teams that were not included, I feel kind of bad for them. Do you think it was a good idea to start with just 8 teams, or should all the teams had come in this first time around?
Man, I'd have to look at their books. You know, as someone who's involved in business, you got to look at the books. Could they
Mm-hmm.
afford it? 16 teams. What are their margins to? Are they allowed to take a loss right now for 2 years? But if they had 16 teams, if it didn't work in 2024, are we shafted out of 2025 and 2026 of this? I always say with a spring league, if your books are half decent, you can afford to do this thing for 3 years. And essentially, we're on year three for one of these entities and year two for the other. But I'd like to believe with the combined resources that they're on, year one fresh start. So no matter how bad it is the next 2 years, we still get ball until 2026.
Pat Rifino joining us here on the program. Let's take a look at some of the teams. Of course, we got to start with we will start with the USFL champions for 2 straight years, the Birmingham Stallions. How strong do they look coming into this year and going up against a few different teams?
Well, I mean, when you cut guys like Channing Stribling, another mainstay is a guy like Bobby Holly. You cut guys like that, you're telling the rest of the league that you got some pretty talented dudes on that roster,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to agree. You know, not only did they cut those two players, they also got rid of a guy named Jalen Morton, who's been in the league for a couple of years, bounced around the CFL. And while he's not a all star by any means. He's still a guy who's been in their system that they're comfortable going into 2024 with Jamar Smith and Adrian Martinez and Matt Corral as his backups. Um, he got another guy on that roster who I think is going to be a very underrated role is Jordan Thomas, a tight end. Made a lot of highlight plays on special teams. Actually, spent a lot of time on the Panthers practice squad as a linebacker. So in the small league with a lot of versatility, are we going to see a guy like Thomas play linebacker, D end, and fullback in addition to tight end? So that's a storyline I don't think gets talked about enough that I'm really curious about, and that's a guy you can see go back to a practice squad because of his versatility as well.
Pat Rufino joining us on the program. Let's look at the other league champion, the Arlington Renegades, who came out of nowhere because everyone thought it would be the Houston Roughnecks. Then they fell to the Renegades in their conference championship. Then we thought it would be the DC Defenders, who just rolled through everybody. How big of a surprise were the Arlington Renegades last year?
I mean, they were surprised until they got Luis Perez under center, and you saw some stabilizing force at the quarterback position. This is a team that had a lot of production from the running game. If you look at their roster, even still, there's no one on that receiving core that you're like, oh, that's a guy right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a lot of strength through the running game. They did have an injury so far to Garrett McGinn. So I was told it was a torn meniscus. We'll see what happens on that front. League hasn't said anything really about injuries or anything like that, but you got two good tight ends there. Sal Cannell is an all league player or a perennial all league player. Davion Smith with Letty Brown in the backfield. Two guys you really want to keep tabs on as well, the elder statesmen. But they'll run a running back by committee. And we'll see. Perez has every opportunity there to succeed. We'll see what happens to him. Someone you want to keep an eye on as well as a USFL guy is Jake Lucina. He's been an all conference player over the last couple of years. We'll see what happens with him. And then there's a linebacker named Christian Sam who spent 2023 or 2022 with the Cowboys for a little bit and then was out of football last year. So we'll see what happens with him.
Oh man, talking all kinds of football with Pat Rafino. Let's switch to the NFL. Of course, free agency craziness going on right now with big names being on the move. Tell me a couple of moves that surprised you and if you think they will work with their new teams.
I mean, it might not be a big name, but I saw today Drew Lock getting signed by the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
That to me kind of puts the brakes on the relocation of Daniel Jones. I think you bring in Locke as kind of a we'll see what happens type thing.
Yeah.
If he needs to go, Locke's a guy I think could really reboost his stock. I think he did some good things in Seattle, and a lot of people were high on him as well. But to me, I think it signals that they're either going to trade down in the draft or they're going to pick up one of these three good wide receivers in Malik Neighbors, Rome Oduze, and if I doubt he'll be there, but Marvin Harrison Jr. Because I don't think any of those top three quarterbacks are going to be there.
Right.
You also got Daniil Hunter getting out of Minnesota finally, and then I think the big one today was Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, ground and pound, add in Lamar Jackson and his rushing ability with the rest of the running backs they got there. They'll figure it out pretty quick. Quarterback movement, you got Brissett to the Pats. It's a good veteran move. Mariota to the Commanders. That room's about to get crowded because we'll see what happens, what they do with Sam Howell. Obviously, Russell Wilson's moved the needle a little bit, going to the uh, going to the Steelers. I mean, I think that's Kenny Pickett's team until week 4, but I'll never count out Mason Rudolph.
Right.
You know, I think that guy deserves more of an opportunity. I don't think he's a star by any means, or I don't even think he's a high tier starting quarterback. But
Mm-hmm.
what has he done to deserve the treatment he has gotten in the NFL? I feel like he's done what he can. Essentially, got his name dragged through the mud by being called a racist with the
Mm-hmm.
Miles Garrett situation, which everyone was like, that didn't happen. You had African American players coming to his defense. If
Mm-hmm.
he said something, probably would have gotten called out at one point, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Easy.
yeah, I mean, 70% of the league's African American. I'm sure someone on this team would have had a problem with it. But
Mm-hmm.
Sam Darnold to the Vikings. I don't think Nick Mullins has been signed yet. I'd rather see him go to the Jets versus Trevor Simeon. But the Jets pick up Tyrod Taylor, which you got a 40-year-old quarterback coming off a Achilles injury. Not bad, not a bad move. And we got Kirk Cousins going to the Dirty A. What do we think about that? Like there's a lot of weapons down there. Could we see Kyle Pitts explode? Does Cordell Patterson want to come and hang out on a vet min, just to be around that? So many moves. It's the legal tampering period. A
Yep.
lot of sexy stuff. Gardner Minshew to the Raiders. Very curious to see what's going on about that. Because I was big on Jaden Daniels going to the Raiders to reunite with Antonio Pierce. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you sign a guy like Gardner Minshew. You have a guy who's got reps there who played pretty well, and Aiden O'Connell. I don't, maybe you do bring in the young quarterback. I don't know. What does Devontae want?
With the signing of Kirk Cousins with the Falcons and all of the ripple effects with the quarterbacks and the big free agents being signed, let me bring this name to your attention. With both the potential destinations for one Justin Fields off the board, now what do the Bears do?
And I'm not high on Caleb. That's my problem. Is I'm too biased. I think a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff he's done. I think he's an all-world talent with a JV personality, and
Mm-hmm.
that's here. Is like I don't think Justin Fields is the guy, but I think he's willed them to games, and I think he deserves to be treated with a little bit of a higher threshold of respect, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know Justin Fields is going to be your true Pro Bowler. I know some guys sneak into the Pro Bowl. I think most fans realize the Pro Bowl doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
But when you think of like, okay, these are the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks, I don't in your conference. I don't think that's Justin Fields, but I do think Justin Fields is going to represent himself, the city of Chicago, and his teammates in a more positive light than Caleb Williams will. I've seen Justin Fields lose. I've seen Caleb Williams lose. Trevor Lawrence lost 3 games his whole life before he went to the NFL.
Right.
You know what I mean? Eventually, things don't add up.
Hmm. The thing with, and you and I share the opinion about Caleb Williams. His personality is, I believe, is going to cost him. He has an all-world talent, and I've gotten into flat-out arguments with people that think Caleb Williams is going to be this all-world player and that he has the mentality to lead a team, and everyone's connecting him with the Bears. And I keep getting the question, how can you say that Caleb Williams will not lead a team? I point you to the game against Utah when Utah walked down the field, got a couple of personal fouls called against USC after Caleb Williams had brought them back from a huge deficit. But when the players were shaking hands after Utah walked off in the Coliseum in Los Angeles, where was Caleb Williams? There's my there's my question right there. Where was Caleb Williams when the teams were shaking hands? Now I understand that you lost the game, but you got to lose with some dignity. I didn't see any in that game.
Yeah, it's between that, the stuff with his father rubs me the wrong way, and I
Mm-hmm.
get a man will always try to do right by his son. That's not my issue. It's there's a little bit too much trying to be Arch Manning, or
Mm-hmm.
Archie Manning, but Archie Manning, in my opinion, wasn't coming at this in an opinion in a position of malice. Archie Manning was coming at this as, I know my son. I was in a very bad situation in which my legacy was hurt
Mm-hmm.
with the Saints. That was a bad franchise. And I'm not saying the Bears got it going, but I am saying if Justin Fields is wielding you to 6 wins, 7 wins, I think Caleb Williams is more talented than Justin Fields beyond, you know, by a long shot. But there were like Tyson Badgett was winning them games as well. So it's like there's talent there. Now act like an adult and push through, and that's kind of my thing with Caleb. And we've all seen gracious winners. It's easy to be great when you know when you're winning and everything's going your way, but when you're losing, your true character shows. And every time that we see Caleb lose, we see a headline. Is that fair to him? Possibly not, but you're making all this money, you're doing all this stuff, you've been rated this high. Heavy is the head that lies the crown. I'd say the same. I'm going to say the same thing in 2025 when we talk about Shador when they go 6-6.
Right.
You know, which I don't think Shador could even be nearly the quarterback Caleb can.
Mm-hmm.
But if maybe some of that humble pie at Colorado last year, maybe when the careers are said and done, Shador has a better career because maybe going 4-8 and flexing on an Arizona State team humbles you a little bit.
Yeah. The game where Shador really got humbled was the game in Oregon when the Oregon Ducks just stomped all over him. And I
Yeah,
understand players having confidence within themselves. I understand that. But again, with Caleb Williams and with Shador Sanders, you can have all the confidence and the talent in the world, but if you don't have the humility, it's not going to carry you anywhere. And I point to that game as an example for Shador Sanders, just as I point to the Utah game for Caleb Williams.
I don't point to that game. I point to Arizona State when he flexed
Mm-hmm.
because you did what you were supposed to do. Like it's kind of like sometimes I coach ball and my kids will make a play and they'll be like, "Oh, I made that play," and I'm like, "Yeah, you're supposed to. You're better
Right.
than. Why didn't you make 3 more plays before?" And obviously, I articulated a little bit different, but that's the the beans, the rice and beans of the situation. And I point to the Colorado State game. They had no business giving Colorado State that much leeway. They
Right.
won, but I mean, with all the hype, with the weapons, granted Travis Hunter gets hurt that game, and that Blackburn kid, I think it was a dirty hit. I think people were a little bit over on him, but when you're
Hmm.
playing Colorado, everything you do is going to be maximized tenfold, good, bad, indifferent type thing. So that's a different conversation. Which I saw Black. I'm man. I'll tell you, we talk Colorado every 5 seconds. It seems like, but and I like that. I like that Travis Hunter kid, and this what he did to that Blackburn kid, like having him come on this YouTube and whatnot and talking with the boy. That just that just to me spoke volumes about Travis Hunter as a man.
Hmm. It did.
That's a that's a guy that I will root for the rest of his career.
Same here. I definitely will after seeing that conversation. One more with Shador Sanders before I let you go. The game against Stanford when they were up 29-0 and they wind up losing in in double overtime. You're up 29-0 against a team that you should beat in the Stanford Cardinal, and Shador and company did not put them away. Give me your thoughts on that game and what it did to Colorado and what it could do for them going forward.
Well, that was the game when they didn't shake hands, I believe, right? That was
Yeah.
like that was when half of them ran off. I mean, in my personal opinion, I put that less on Shador and more on the team in general. I think he only had one or two turnovers that game, and they
Mm-hmm.
still put up. I mean, like you gotta you gotta have that killer mentality, in my opinion. Like you gotta put the teams away. And I mean, I don't remember Stanford's record and whatnot, but I
Mm-hmm.
know they were coming off. I know Colorado, they won their 3 games and they lost a couple games and whatnot, and then I don't know. You just got to put these teams away, and that's when you're up 29-0. I didn't watch the full game because we were playing. We
Yeah.
were playing, but the on the flip side, if I were to watch the all 22, I'd be very curious about like clock management. Were they slowing the game down? Like they couldn't get a stop. I know they had two drives towards the end. It was like a 12 play and a 15 play drive or something like that Stanford had. And then, Colorado, came back or not came back, but extended the lead with a touchdown to Hunter. But that was only 4 plays. So what is that? A
Mm-hmm.
minute off the clock?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you let a 14 play drive go. You know the scenario because they scored that touchdown. You get the ball 5 minutes back. Make something happen. Nut up. Like I kind of go with the coaching on that because they didn't score any points in the third quarter.
Mm-mm. None. None. Man, love talking football with this man, Pat Rifino, joining us here on the program, talking all kinds of football, including the United Football League. He and I are going to cover the UFL in 2024. Man, I can't wait to have you back and have you on each week, breaking down the UFL and the teams and just all kinds of football. Thanks for coming on, my friend. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
We'll wrap it up after this.